Can you see that on the one camera? Can you see him coming down? There he goes.
Yeah,
there he is.
I see it. Yeah.
All right, let me get rid of that.
Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by Underdog. Code Mayo will get you a free pick at Underdog along with a deposit bonus of up to $1,000. Jake Ciely from theathletic.com is on the line to go through the tiers of the power poll with me. If you want a spoiler alert, check out the description. All the rankings and last week's rankings are down there as well. 3 teams in my tier number 1, Kansas City, number 1, Baltimore, number 2, and the Detroit Lions, number 3. This changes from last week in terms of tiers, but not in terms of where these teams were. These teams were 1, 2, 3 for me last week, but something's fishy with the Chiefs. It's not quite like the Eagles from last year, but it's like a little step above that. Like, I don't think it's going to go as badly for them in the second half as it did for the Eagles, but something's just not right. And eventually all these injuries are going to have to catch up with them.
You would think they would, but that's where we went the opposite. Again, I have one team in tier 1, and it's just the Chiefs, and then I have a group of 5, mostly because it's the joke we keep making. They're playing C-level football, and they just keep winning. They're still undefeated, and it's not like they're playing terrible teams either. So I could see your argument. Like, actually, in previous weeks, I was with your argument. I would say, Minnesota was there with them. You can make a case for the Lions and stuff like that. But now I just can feel like even with Patrick Mahomes playing subpar Patrick Mahomes football, they just keep finding ways to win. They're not even clicking, and they're still finding ways to win.
Yeah, that's really, and the defense has been so good. And I think that's the one part that people really underrate about this team. And they keep piecing people together, and it keeps working. Like, hey, it's a Noah Gray game. Go nuts. If any other team picked up Kareem Hunt, is there any chance he'd be as good as this?
There'd be a handful. Like, you could say, like, okay, the Lions lost both their running backs, and I think Kareem Hunt would be that good, but it'd be Derrick Henry goes down for the Ravens, he'd be that good. There'd probably only be like 3 or 4 teams, and the Chiefs being one of them. So, yeah, I think this is very selective that this worked out for them.
Obviously, we're doing this before Monday Night Football in Week 7, so Baltimore has not played as of yet. But I was taking a gander at the old MVP odds for the NFL. Patrick Mahomes is the favorite at the moment at plus 325, which seems odd, considering he had...
Stupid.
I mean, look, they're the only undefeated team, and he continues to piece together this offense with, like, absolute goobers and people who don't know the playbook. So a lot of it is on him to manufacture these, manufacture the yardage, manufacture the first downs. And although he's thrown 8 interceptions to the 6 touchdowns, you still have the confidence that he's going to do the job when he needs to, and he's proven to be out. So I get why he's there. This seems like they're giving him the benefit of the doubt because this is the highest degree of difficulty offense he's had to work with.
Sure, but it's not MVP, like, I don't know. Like, I know this is the odds the rest of the year, and, like, okay, he'll turn it around type of situation, but you got to factor in somewhat what's happened so far. I don't think you can just, like, dismiss that. You just brought it up. More interceptions than touchdowns. They're not winning only because, I was going to say only because of him. They're probably not even winning some games because of him. I would say this very Week 7 was almost in spite of him. It was their run game and their defense, which you brought up, which if you were going to give me an MVP of the Chiefs, it's the defense.
It is, although the 2 runs from Mahomes, and where he absolutely trucked that guy at the goal line, were awesome. And listen, the most undefendable play in football was the fake lateral on a Patrick Mahomes run that everyone bites for every single time to allow him to get down the field. But this isn't a fantasy award. Like, it's not who's the best fantasy player.
Not.
That's kind of...
I wasn't talking fantasy,
but that's kind of offensive player of the year. I guess the question, like, it all depends on how you structure MVP. And the fact that Lamar has 2 and Mahomes is what, 1 or 2? Does he have 1? 1 MVP?
Yeah.
That he gets the benefit of the doubt in this situation, that if you took Mahomes off this Chiefs team right now and put anyone else, put Lamar in as their quarterback, let's say, for the drop off to, so Lamar and Allen are tied for second in odds. They're both 5-1. So that's the way to look at it right now. So they're saying the next 2 best quarterbacks are Lamar and Allen, which I would agree with. If you put either one of those guys on this Chiefs team, is there any chance they'd be undefeated?
I think there is. Honestly, it'd just be a completely different team. Yeah, it's 2. He won that 2019 season. So it's 2 from Lamar Jackson. I double-checked on that.
No, 2 for Lamar, but only 1 for Mahomes, right?
Right, right.
So
For Mahomes total?
yeah, Mahomes has the 3 Super Bowl MVPs, but I think he only has the 1 actual MVP. Either way, that everyone recognizes Mahomes as the best quarterback of this generation. Like
2.
creeping.
3 Super Bowl, 2 MVPs in the regular season for Mahomes.
For Mahomes.
They both
Okay,
have 2.
so he's tied with Lamar. So if people regard Mahomes higher than they regard Lamar as a talent and like an all-timer, which I think almost everyone does, not to take anything away from Lamar, Mahomes is just that good, that getting him more MVPs is on like voters' minds. Because this isn't all just about a stats MVP or what happens. You have to think about what the voters are going to do too.
Absolutely. And that's fair. And this comes down to, like, you bring it up a lot of times too, is like the most ridiculous bets people will make when teams getting 7-0, 8-0, or 0-8, and like people, because they always want to vote for what's they like, oh, it's going to be crazy. Somebody's going to go undefeated. Somebody's going to never win a game. And it's kind of like, it's the perceptions. It's always the perceptions where you get those. So yeah, Mahomes, but to go back to your original question, I think it'd be a completely different offense, but this team would be 6-0 with Lamar Jackson. I would absolutely say with Lamar Jackson, they're 6-0. I would even say there's a good chance with Josh Allen, they're 6-0 for what Josh Allen's had to go through with the Bills. And now we saw how much better, like to go jump ahead a little bit in my tier 2. I jumped the Bills all the way up into tier 2 just from the Amari Cooper addition now that he has a wide receiver 1. So I think you would have teams or quarterbacks that could keep the team at 6-0 because the offense would be better. It would just be a different offense. Now, if you said Lamar has to come in and run the Patrick Mahomes offense, then I'd say, yeah, of course not. It's going to be completely different.
Just trying to find where are Allen's stats. He doesn't have a bunch of passing yards this year, but I feel like his touchdown to, let's see, 12 touchdowns, 0 interceptions for Josh Allen this year.
I think that's pretty good.
It's not bad. Like, he would be the one that I'd be looking at.
Patrick Mahomes.
But he would be the one I'd be looking at if I was, 5-1 is probably not great. So they're both 5. Goff is 6.5 to 1. Stroud is 10. Love is 14. Burrow 16. I don't think the Bengals are good enough for Burrow to win. Jaden Daniels is 18. Darnold's 18. Purdy's 25. Mayfield's 25. Hurts is 25. Then you're into your like Dak, Caleb Williams, Derrick Henry, Geno, Kyler Murray. Like, those guys ain't winning. But with Allen, like, he doesn't have one. He's been in that conversation for ages. And I do think this is probably, at least coming into the season, the worst Bills team in like half a decade.
It is, but at least it's starting to show some semblance of being a contender, and that's why I have them in the tier 2, is the defense still vulnerable, played a little bit better, and then I really think the Amari Cooper addition just changes everything for this team.
I tend to agree, and he barely played. And that's something that we've seen with the Bills receiving core so far this year, is they've been using a ton of rotation in everything they do.
Yes.
Like, Shakir's on the field a bunch because no one really comes in to play his spot outside of Curtis Samuel. But maybe it's because it was his first week in the offense, trying to get up to speed with all of the playbook. But Amari essentially just stepped into the MVS role. That's it.
Yeah, which will obviously increase. And Keon Coleman had his biggest usage and best game of his career, which seems like maybe he's the 2/3, depending on how Shakir and he are used. But it comes down to he's going to kick Mac Hollins out, who Mac Hollins was at the top with Keon Coleman this past week. Yeah, Shakir's essentially primarily 3 wide only. He keeps coming off the field when there's only 2 wide receivers, unfortunately for him. So it's going to be matchup dependent in that kind of situation for what they're facing, of whether it's going to be kind of a try to guess the Shakir versus Coleman game, which is going to come back to, I know DK Metcalf's hurt, but it was kind of trying to predict that JSN versus Tyler Lockett situation every week.
I did my full waiver breakdown and injury report up on Mayo Media Network. By the way, Jake, if you subscribe to Mayo Media Network right now on YouTube, you get a ballot into a draw for $500. Additionally, if you subscribe, rate, and review 5 stars to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on Apple, you get a ballot in that draw, and on Spotify, you get another ballot in that draw. Do all 3 takes about 33 seconds, and you can have $500 cash. Would you like $500 cash?
Yeah, I'm going to go unsubscribe and resubscribe to everything.
Smart. That's how you get yourself in. If you've done it before, go do it again. Check all that out. And again, all of those pickups will be updated in the newsletter link that's down in the description right now. So Baltimore plays on Monday night. I mean, they look awesome. They're a toe away from being the number 1 team in this poll, right?
Pretty much. So I have them 4. Again, they have 2 losses to Minnesota, 1. We want to nitpick them. They're the same tier for me.
You have
I think part of it.
You have Minnesota ahead of Baltimore
right now.
That's outrageous.
Because
that's outrageous.
They haven't played tonight. I'm just still leaving the window open for how they look tonight. Like, if they come out and look great again, then I would immediately switch them. Like, I would just put Minnesota at 4, Baltimore at 3. This is only because Baltimore hasn't played.
Well, Detroit remains at number 3 in that tier 1. I was dubious about how much pressure they'd be able to generate without Aiden Hutchinson. And they didn't generate a bunch of pressure until they really needed it, and they came up with some new schemes. Their defense actually looked pretty good. Maybe that's a Darnold thing. And in the second half, Darnold looked a lot better, but it seemed like they were confusing him a lot in the first half.
They did, and part of what I want to take away from that game is this is why I'm not kicking down Minnesota too far, because I had them too because they were undefeated, is it really comes down to, I think, Detroit, Minnesota, and Baltimore as of tonight. Like I said, if they wax them tonight, like, I would put Baltimore ahead of them. But like, they're all in the same conversation where I think they're all contenders, and the biggest takeaway I had from Minnesota was I still had doubts of trusting Sam Darnold, especially after their game right before their bye and how terrible he looked at times in that one. And you're right, the first half looked like, we're knocking Minnesota all the way down to tier 3. Like, they're a huge hit. Darnold, that was fun to start the year, but it's going downhill fast. But the second half, and when it was, like you said, the Lions were getting pressure. Second half, he was elite numbers. I'm not going to call him elite, but he also had to play from behind. And like, that told me something about this Darnold, is that he has taken a step forward. He didn't crumble under pressure, both playing from behind and the pressure the Lions were bringing. So it showed enough for me to keep him in this tier. To kind of tell you, I have Lions, Vikings, Ravens, Packers, Bills as all this second tier. I think all 5 of them are in the same conversation for me.
Okay, well, my tier is a little bit extended in tier 2, but just to go back to the Vikings for a second, they're only 3-point favorites at the Rams on Thursday night. Doesn't that seem fishy?
I mean, is this like Cooper Kupp coming back and like he's just going to make everything better?
Are all their offensive linemen coming back?
I don't know. The offensive line the offensive line has held up better than we thought it would, but yes, it's still facing Minnesota, still facing Flores. Or is it the thing that you brought up, like, what was it, week 3 or 4, where you said, like, at some point in the season, the Flores magic seems to stop? Maybe, like, is Vegas banking on that?
Maybe, and it looked like that was going to be the case. The first quarter was really good for the Vikings, and then, you know, the in-between, second and third, were not so great, and it just, I bet on Minnesota. I thought Minnesota was going to win and cover at home because I thought their pressure was going to get home. I saw the numbers with Goff against the blitz so far this year, and they were really, really good. But I think there's a big difference, and people conflate this a lot, that being good against the blitz when teams blitz against you and being good under pressure are two completely different things. Detroit was excellent at picking up the blitz and giving Goff time throughout the course of the year. It's when he's under pressure that he sucks. And for the first 3 quarters of the game, they were able to pick up the blitz the entire time. They just gave him a clean pocket to pass in, and he was just dinking and dunking over everyone. There was someone open. Khalif Raymond was open like 4 plays in a row. No one was around him. And then finally, the Vikings started getting home, and you saw what happened to Goff.
Right, and I was going to say it's almost a tale of 2 halves, but to your point here, it's almost a tale of, at least for the Vikings, it was a tale of 2 halves, and then for the Lions, it was a tale of 3 quarters and a quarter. Like, if you watch the first 2-3 quarters of the Lions compared to the last quarter, it's completely 2 different teams. If you watch the first half versus the second half versus the Vikings, completely 2 different teams. And maybe that here, I'll give you a credit here on this one, Pat, because I'm going to give you credit later in the show, so just hold on to that one. But yeah, but to your point here, is like, maybe that's a testament to you having the Ravens at number 2, is that both of these teams showed inconsistency within one game.
They did, and listen, as you pointed out, Vegas beat the Ravens, so anything can happen on a week-to-week basis. So I'm not panicking over the Vikings. I kept them where they were at number 4 in the power poll. It's just, after I had them behind Detroit anyway, they lost to Detroit in a coin flip game. I'll keep them where they're at. Like, I really liked them on Thursday night. I just thought that line seemed really disrespectful.
It does seem really. It seems weird.
Was it the Rams? I'm trying to think back, because I told this to Cuss last night when we were watching it, and that game came up. I was like, wasn't the Rams-Vikings game that Kirk Cousins-Stafford game that was like 51-48 on Thursday night?
I think you're right. But that Kirk Cousins, was that with the Vikings?
I think so, because it was like, Kirk Cousins can't win in primetime. Then he put up 48 points, and they still lost.
I'm looking back to see. But I
want to say like 2018, 2019. Rams.
So that would
Vikings.
But that wouldn't be the Vikings at that point for Kirk Cousins.
It wouldn't?
He's not been there that long, has he?
I don't remember. I remember there was a 51-48 game on Thursday Night Football.
Well, then they just type in 51-48 Rams Thursday Night Football.
Maybe
there you go.
I'm just trying to think if I have the teams right or wrong.
So, I mean, there was the Rams Chiefs 54-51.
That might be the game that I'm thinking of, actually. For some reason, I thought the Vikings were in it.
because actually, good old AI. This is the world we're in now. Scary. The Los Angeles Rams have never played in a game in the NFL with the score of 51-48, but they did play in a high-scoring game against the Kansas City Chiefs at 54-51, November 19, 2018. Thank you, AI. They're listening to us.
All right, ChatGPT, knowing. Oh, guess what? I hit a 20-1 and a 10-1 underdog play on Sunday. London game, all I had to do was go 0 for 3 in the London game just to go a quick 5 for 5 in the afternoon. So you want to roll some money forward here into the Monday night games?
We could. What's your idea? By the way, 2018 was his first year with the Vikings. I thought it was 1 year later. Okay. You win on that one.
So if you roll the money forward, I have this entire entry into the newsletter right now. So code Mayo at Underdog gets you the deposit bonus of up to $1,000, and it gives you a Kyler Murray free pick on Monday Night Football, and you can wager up to $100 on that. So I did. And this one pays 19-1. So $1,900 if you win. I guess you win $1,800. Kyler Murray, higher or lower than 0.5 total yards? I'm going higher. What do you think?
I have to think about that one, but I think I'll take it.
Okay, so these two are correlated in my mind. Baker Mayfield higher than 14.5 rushing yards. You don't seem to like it.
No, I just had to think about it. I don't hate it. It's solid.
Okay, and then Rachaad White lower than 27.5 rushing yards. They talked about a three-headed backfield.
Definitely okay with that.
And if you're going to check one guy who's probably not going to get a ton of carries in this game, it's going to be White. He's going to catch passes. I think that the one thing you need to fade in this game is if they get behind and then White is just always on the field and they give him like a 3rd and 17 draw that he breaks off for like 25 yards.
That's the biggest concern. That's why I was like, but against the Ravens, I mean, this is a team that's more vulnerable in the past, to your point being about the fact that Rachaad White is not so much the lead carrier anymore, and it was getting his volume in the passing game. But as you mentioned, yeah, of course, if they're down 3 or 4 scores, it just might be more White in general because of where they trust him in pass pickup. So yeah, I'm actually good with that one, too.
All right.
I'm good with that.
Baker's beat that 14.5 number by at least 7 yards in 4 or 6 games, by the way. Dude loves taking off when there's a bit of pressure on him. Justice Hill, higher than 11.5 rushing yards.
Yes.
Tampa's D sucks. Don't forget that.
It does. And Justice Hill had been more involved until their previous game.
Yeah, he beat this in 4. He's beat it in 4 of the past 5 games. He just didn't do it last week. And then the last one, I just feel like J.K. Dobbins is going to get the ball a whole bunch, higher than 79.5 yards. I
was just about to say, it's got to be pretty high. Like J.K. Dobbins had a top 10 running back this week, so yeah. This is they're giving him 20 plus touches a week. This is kind of getting to the point where, remember Kyron Williams late last year, and his prop for carries was like 20.5, and he still blew past it?
Yeah. The thing you need to fade with Dobbins is he doesn't get hurt mid-game.
That's the only concern.
Yeah. And you can pull the trick on Monday Night Football. I rank them Justice Hill, Vidal, Trey Benson, and then Sean Tucker as if you play on Yahoo, you can do that swap move with the backup running backs.
Yeah.
That would be the order I would put those guys in if they were available.
And you said Benson was your first one?
No, he was 3rd.
Who was your first one?
It was Justice Hill.
Oh. I still have a hesitancy of I just don't think Justice Hill is going to be the clear lead if Derrick Henry gets hurt.
I would tend to agree, but I don't think that Benson's going to be the clear lead. They still use
I was because Vidal. That's why I was going to go Vidal because I could see Harbaugh just giving him the 20 touches.
Well, and Gus Edwards is on IR, so I guess that would make sense. Yeah, maybe it's Vidal, then Justice Hill, then Benson for me. That makes more sense.
That would be the rotation I go, or the order I go.
All right. Let's talk tier 2 of these teams. You gave out your tier 2 in the power poll already. Mine is Minnesota at number 4, Green Bay at number 5, Houston at number 6, Washington at 7, Buffalo at 8, San Francisco at 9. Cuss and I were bickering about San Francisco on the live show. If people missed the live show from Sunday night with the Week 7 recap, it's a fun show with Cam on. It looked like Cuss ate a bowl of maggots, but it was just teriyaki chicken rice or something. It looked awful. But San Francisco is the most difficult one to figure out here because Purdy looked terrible against Kansas City. I put him up to, remember when Kurt Warner injured his thumb and just floated the ball everywhere all the time? That's how he was throwing the ball on Sunday. But no, Ayuk's probably out for the season. Debo's probably back next week. Jennings is probably back next week. Trent Williams got ejected from that game late. He'll be back next week. Christian McCaffrey should be back within 3 weeks, let's say. Like, they are going to get healthier. And I just don't believe that Seattle's all that good. Like, I still think that San Francisco wins the division unless they are legitimately cursed. And this is just the year from hell.
This goes back to, this is now the third week in a row, Pat, that I was like, stop giving them excuses. And I don't disagree with most of anything you said. I just have him at 14. I already had him outside the top 10 at this point. Everything you just said is why I have concerns going forward. Yeah, we're saying Christian McCaffrey's coming back. That's a few weeks out still, probably after their bye, which has been the report pretty much since day one that most people expected. There was some positivity, there was some negativity. But anyway, as you mentioned, Ayuk's out, which isn't the huge loss because Ayuk really hadn't been doing much outside of the one game. Jennings coming back, okay, cool. We saw Jennings at the beginning of the season, and he's obviously a hot pickup in waivers. And Pearsall is back, so that's in the mix now too. But the biggest question that you have is it's Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy this year looks like the quarterback that was drafted with the last pick in the draft. He looks like part of the problem right now. He's playing poor. He's not making his throws from last year. It goes back to the inaccurate Purdy, but the team made up for him being accurate, where you can have, this, but for everybody out there, there's off target and then there's catchable, two different things, because you can be off target and still have a catchable pass as long as it's in range. It's just not on the target, like specifically whatever they classify as on target. But this team makes so many passes catchable, but there's just not clicking right now in so many facets, and including somewhat of the defense is not being consistent. So call me crazy, but I would take the Buccaneers. I would take the Eagles right now because even with their problems, they're still winning games. I would take Washington, as you said, and I would go up from there. I just have them down at 14 right now.
The way that I think about it is if these teams were to play each other, so the Niners played at home against Dallas this week. Obviously, they're favored even with all the injuries. Then they're at Tampa Bay next week. They will be favored in that game. Now, they were just favored against Kansas City and lost. That doesn't mean anything. But when it comes to perception of how people value these teams, maybe I'm just late to jump off the San Francisco bandwagon. But when I see them rolling, like when they played last week against the Seahawks, and the Seahawks just made Atlanta look pretty stupid in Atlanta, and the Niners beat the shit out of them.
That's true, but it's like, we know the Seahawks aren't anything. They're all over the map.
Are the Seahawks is the Seahawks offense only good indoors?
It's possible. Are the Seahawks just one of those teams that it's any given week you don't know who they're going to be? I mean, hell, the Falcons from Matt Ryan years. It's like any given year. Or every given week, you could be Super Bowl contending team, or you could look like utter trash.
Well, you can say that, but they've looked really good in 2 games offensively so far this season. They've struggled in a lot of different ones, and when they've played outdoors, they've struggled against the Broncos, the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Giants, and the 49ers. And then they go on the road and play the Lions. They lost, but their offense looked awesome, and their offense looked awesome against the Falcons.
Yeah, but so the Broncos, the Patriots, and the 49ers, or the Broncos, the Giants, and the 49ers, as crazy as it's going to say about the Giants, the one thing those 3 things have is the defense, and whether it's outdoors or not. The Patriots is the one that doesn't make sense. Patriots defense has been abysmal this year, especially against the run. So the fact that they couldn't do much in that game, was that the one? That was the one that Charbonnet didn't do anything, right?
No, he ended up
replacing Kenneth Walker.
He ended up scoring the late touchdown. They won that game in overtime.
Yeah. So, look, I get your point here. Maybe this is the old Jared Goff, what we expected for Jared Goff for this year. Is that what you're telling me?
A little bit. It just, listen, it's such a small sample, it might mean nothing. I just thought it was very interesting that it was a lot like the Bills for 3 years ago, 4 years ago, is that, they have this, Josh Allen, get him in the cold, he'll rip through the wind. But anytime that you put them indoors, they scored 50 points.
So that's what you're calling Geno Smith Josh Allen? He's the mix of Jared Goff, Josh Allen. No, look, Seattle is just a incomplete team, and you're going to get some good and some bad. And I think there's other conversation of teams that we could have just like them. I don't think Seattle and Dallas are that much different. They have big holes in some spots. They have some good showings in some spots, and then other times they look like one of the worst teams in the league. So that's actually jump way, 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 way ahead. I have the Cowboys and Seahawks almost back to back. But anyway, to go back to this whole conversation, the Buccaneers, I would take the Bucs at home right now. I would take the Bucs at home. If they were playing this week, I would take them over the 49ers. And I could be wrong. But right now, I would take them. And I don't know that I wouldn't take the Bears right now over the 49ers.
No. Let's not get crazy here, Jake. The Bears are fine. They're on temporary parole right now. That they've beat they beat three really crappy teams in a row. Let's see what they do against Washington, who I have rated as a good team. Now, if they can beat Washington, then they get utmost credit for that. And I guess if Mariota plays and Jaden Daniels doesn't, then it's a bit of a different situation. But Washington can bring pressure, and we've seen Caleb Williams struggle against pressure, especially up the gut so far this season. You put him to a decision, he makes bad decisions under pressure, and he's just played three teams in a row who don't generate any pressure.
And you're not wrong, but at the same time, I said I think that my point here is that the 49ers and Bears deserve to be in the conversation with each other at this point. Like, there's a good chance at the same time, Caleb is turning the corner. Like, and a healthy Keenan Allen is helping things, and the defense continues to be pretty, I'd say not great. It's not the Bears from even last year, but good enough that you're worried when they face some teams. Like, this is like we just talked about. You know how much I love Jaden Daniels, but let's also not throw out the fact that, like, okay, this is going to be a good test for Jaden Daniels too, who has passed all of his tests so far. But the Bears are going to show something for him if he plays, which it sounds like he might, because unless they find more in the tests today, so far all the tests came back fine and no cracked ribs. But my point. Bears, Chargers, I don't want to give the entire thing away, but Bears, Chargers, Bengals, all there with the 49ers for me.
Yeah,
it's just, you've been inconsistent.
I still have the 49ers as a cut above all of those teams. I still believe that if we're tracking a team that can still win the Super Bowl, it would be the 49ers over any of the teams you just mentioned. But maybe on a neutral site in 2 weeks that the Bears might beat the 49ers, although they don't play. Theoretically, they could beat them. If we get to January, I'd still take the 49ers as the team that might be coming out of the NFC, not the Bears.
I don't think they have a shot at this joint. I'd take 3 of the AFC North team or NFC North teams before I would take them, and not being the Bears. I mean, I would take the Packers, Vikings,
according to my power rankings, where I have 3 of them inside the top 5, I agree with you.
So there you go. So I just don't think they're coming out. I don't think they're even coming out of the NFC East or NFC East, NFC as a whole.
You don't think that they're going to win the NFC? That's a hot take, Jake. the team that's like 14-1 to win the NFC isn't going to win? Great. You got any more like hot takes for us?
You just said I could see them coming out in January. I don't think there's a chance.
I most definitely think there's a chance. They get healthy, they could be fine here. Green Bay at 5, Houston
You got
6.
magic serum for Brandon Ayuk?
I mean, he just said he wasn't doing anything anyway.
You said get healthy. Who do they have to get healthy? Christian McCaffrey and nobody else.
Debo and Jennings. Right now, 3 guys that weren't playing.
Well, Debo was this whole bull crap the NFL pulled this week with all these people that are like sick, not real. First of all, sick that we didn't know about. And then 2 is like all these, full practice off the reports, or not even full practice, just off the injury report. Juju Smith-Schuster, Debo Samuel, who else? There was some, like all these people. Jordan Whittington. And then it's like, by the way, no, they're actually really hurt and they're not even playing in these games. I know Smith-Schuster aggravated his, but that doesn't mean off the injury report and you were bad enough to aggravate it in the first quarter. Get the hell out of here.
I was way off with my guess of the 49ers of what they are to win the NFC right now.
What are they?
4-1. They're the second favorites in the NFC.
Stupid.
That seems like potentially a bit much, but the books are seeing it. I guess the books are just feasting on suckers like myself, knowing that, because this happened with me. I remember Leone being on the show, I think it was 2 years ago, when Kansas City was struggling, and the books did flip on them. They made them 14-1 to win the Super Bowl, and I was like, fuck it. I'm just get them to January. I'll bet them right now, and they have Mahomes. It'll work out, and it did. And I think that they're worried about that with San Francisco in the NFC, is that if they can just get in and get it figured out in December, that they're going to be really dangerous. Because they've been there 2 of the past 4 years.
Okay, so I see your point there, but like 14-1 made sense. 4-1, no.
Yeah, in contrast to that, Dallas is 16-1, a team that legitimately has no chance of winning the NFC.
Yeah, that's just because Cowboy fans are going to keep betting it until it even goes. Like, hell, you could make that whatever the hell you want, and the Cowboy fans are going to keep betting it.
You good with Green Bay and Houston at 5 and 6?
I have Houston at 8.
You have
I
Washington.
moved them down. That's what I was going to say. No, I have Washington one spot behind them. Actually, back to back, I could see that a coin flip. I would take Washington if I knew Jaden Daniels was okay. I have Pittsburgh at 7. I was going to say you were right about the Houston Texans because, I had them inside the top 5, and you're like, yeah, I don't know. And watching that game yesterday, it's not even so much that it's Nico Collins is going to fix anything. There's still questions among the team. Like, they're not a perfect team. Nobody's questioning that. That offensive line cannot pass block they can't do anything. And that's my biggest concern. Like, they can run block, but they gave up over 50% pressure in that game to the Packers defense, who is respectable, but the Packers were 20th in quarterback pressure before this game and then blew the doors off that offensive line. 57% pressure on CJ Stroud, and CJ Stroud couldn't do jack crap in that game. And I love the Texans. I can't put them in front of Pittsburgh now at this point. Like, that's a major concern because I don't know how that gets fixed. How do you fix a pass blocking issue in the middle of the season?
Start running different schemes. Maybe don't run on first down every time and just mix it up a little bit so teams don't know exactly what you're going to do.
It could, but how do you fix that on top of it? Like, Tank Dell's dropping everything. That team looks like it's got too many questions right now.
It does, but they keep. They won all the coin flip games until yesterday, and you'll see that normalize throughout the course of the season. The one thing that I like about Houston still is I think their defense is really good. Their schedule and their D, and they play in. Listen, we can all make fun of the AFC East and the NFC East. The AFC South is brutal, man. Like, it has bad teams in it.
I was just about to say, I'm looking at their rest of the season schedule. So Detroit in Week 10. Maybe Miami if Tua's still playing at Week 15 at Kansas. Miami, Kansas City on the road, Baltimore for their last 3 games for us, and then Tennessee on the road for the 18. But outside of Kansas City, Baltimore, maybe Miami and Detroit, all the rest are Colts, Jets, Titans, Jaguars, Titans. They're like pretty soft schedule.
For almost about 2 decades, the irons were really the only good part of my golf game, unless you include 300-yard drives, which meant hitting it about 150 yards straight and 150 yards with slice into the woods to the right. So I finally went and got lessons, straightened out my swing, and all of a sudden I could drive the ball pretty decently, pretty straight. And then my irons just kind of went wayward with the new compression that I was getting onto the ball. So it was time for me to make a change with my irons. So when I heard about the new PXG Black Ops irons and how they can dramatically improve my game, I had to give them a try. Booked a fitting with the PXG location, brought in my current irons, and took the PXG challenge. The staff was amazing. We worked on my ball flight through TrackMan in order to find the perfect irons and the perfect length and the perfect loft for what my game demands these days. And the new Black Ops irons are incredibly easy to hit, they maximize performance, and they're fun. Oh, and they're only $149.99 a stick. That is a great price for a great golf iron. So take the PXG Irons Challenge. It's a ton of fun, and if PXG's new Black Ops irons don't outperform your current irons by delivering either more distance or tighter dispersion, that means better accuracy, during your fitting, you'll get a $250 MasterCards reward card. Hurry, this offer ends October 7th. Book your fitting today at pxg.com. That's pxg.com. Tier number 3 for me, I have Pittsburgh at the top of this tier at number 10, one spot up from 11. Tampa Bay at 11, down from 10. Obviously, they haven't played as of yet. Philadelphia remains at 12. Atlanta falls from 9 to 13. Chicago remains at 14 on its bye week. Cincinnati remains at 15 in a very unimpressive win against the Browns. And Seattle moves up one spot to 16. You can make the case Seattle should be ahead of Atlanta because they just beat the pants off them, but we don't react to one game all the way on this one. I still kind of like Atlanta's prospects long-term versus Seattle, who you just mentioned. Like, they're Jekyll and Hyde every week.
They are. And actually, I have Atlanta inside my top 16, and I have Seattle still down at 20. I don't believe in them. And the fact that I have Denver in front of Seattle, I think if you told me on a neutral field, could Seattle wax them? Sure. Could the Denver defense, and if Bo Nix can do anything on offense, do enough to win that game too? Sure, also. So I think Denver, I have the Cincinnati Bengals at 16. I'm there with you on that one. And then my tiers are a little bit different. I do still have Atlanta at 15. I think Atlanta's this is what's going to happen. This is why Atlanta's not a perfect team and not a perfect contender is any given week, but I would take them well over. I know Seattle just won, but I would think them like 7 out of 10 times if they played 10 times. So basically they would win the next 7 out of 9.
That's pretty impressive for Atlanta to win 7 out of 9. The best of what would that be? The best of 13 series? They'd win that one?
Yeah, against the Falcons or against the Seahawks.
The
I would
Seahawks?
still take the Falcons. Yeah.
That'd be like the old school WCW Booker T versus Chris Benoit best of 7 for the television title to see who gets the number 1 contender spot to fight Fit Finlay at the pay-per-view. They even I just remember watching WCW Saturday nights and hey, there's Booker T and Benoit. Why are these people I know on Saturday night with it's usually just absolute jabronis on Saturday night. Anyway, we talked about the Bucs a little bit. Obviously, they don't play Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson looked good in the second half, man. And he allows them to run a real offense. And that was sort of the reports that were coming out of Pittsburgh throughout the week as you heard them trickle out of why they were making the move. It's Fields is fine, but he just kind of is you're playing the Justin Fields offense when you play Justin Fields. And when you play Russell Wilson, there's a bit of strategy to what you're doing.
Yeah, and I also think it was the perfect thing for Tomlin to get away from it. Tomlin was not going to stop getting the questions of when are you turning to Russ? When are you turning to Russ? When are you turning to Russ? No matter, Fields could have a good game, bad game in between. It didn't matter. It was when are you going to turn to Russ? He got his outcome, the best possible outcome he could get, but the outcome was perfect in this. Is Russell Wilson goes out there and looks like he did for that first 10, 15 minutes for the entire game. And that's we went back to Russ. He stunk. We're going to go turn back to Justin Fields. Answer, done. It's over. You don't have to answer anything anymore. Russ goes out, plays great, which he did for 3 out of the 4 quarters against the Jets defense. And it's also, boom, question answered. So you don't have to deal with it anymore. On top of it, Russell Wilson looked good against the Jets, which is telling because it was against the Jets defense and he was dropping some passes in there. Now, do I think Russell Wilson is going to be perfect for the rest of the year? Absolutely not. But that's why I would say I would take Pittsburgh right now with a capable Russell Wilson over the Houston Texans because it's a more complete team.
I would worry that the Jets aren't generating the same amount of pressure that Houston is, that I'd worry about Houston just getting guys in his face and then see what happens a little bit. The thing that I really like
then the Steelers are going to have 7 people in Stroud's face the entire game.
If you're going to be under equal duress in these situations, I would take Stroud over Russell Wilson in 2024.
I don't know if I would take it after just watching what happened against the Packers.
Maybe, but it was funny that I didn't even think about it until after the game that you had Wilson versus Rodgers. And I think it must have been 2013, it may have even been the 10th year anniversary. Remember the touchdown, no touchdown Packers-Seahawks game?
Oh, God. Yeah. Oh, my God. I remember that. That was wonderful. That clip still comes up all the time. I think that was anytime there's a questionable end zone thing, that comes up.
I think that was.
You trying to remember what year it was?
I think it was 2014.
Packers, Seahawks. Look, you go move to the next thing, and
I don't really want to talk about Cincinnati. They're eventually you can't just keep squeaking by. I know they were up by 3 touchdowns against Watson until he blew out his Achilles, but they just don't look impressive ever. They never look impressive.
They haven't. September 24th, 2012.
2012.
They actually have it.
Wow.
Wikipedia actually has it as the Fail Mary.
That's amazing.
So there you go.
Was it really?
It was Monday Night Football.
It was 2012?
Yeah, Monday Night Football 2012. Fail Mary. CenturyLink Field, Seattle, Washington.
At the fantasy offices, and I wasn't working there then. Jeez, that's weird. All right, yeah. Guess my mind is going on me when we start getting more than a decade past something.
I mean, we had kind of been working together for 2 years at that point.
Yeah. Defeated this.
When did you come over? I was there in 2010.
I came over in 2010 as well.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but I wasn't at Fantasy. The Fantasy offices didn't open until 2013. I was in Jersey then. Actually, I was still in school when I joined, in broadcast school. Then I went to Jersey, then New York. Either way.
Hanging out with Nando in Jersey.
I was hanging out with Nando and Lorenzo down in Jersey. Anyway, so that's my tier 3. My tier 4 kicks off with a team that's again playing on Monday Night Football. It's the Chargers. I could see them, even if they beat the crap out of the Cardinals, I still have no idea how good they are. They're kind of like discount Pittsburgh to me in a weird way. They play good D. Their corners are banged up, so we'll see how they handle Marvin Harrison Jr., who's expected to play. They run the ball pretty well. They're making their field goals. They're not taking stupid penalties. They're kind of like the anti-Chargers in a weird way.
Oh, I was going to say they're like the inverse of the Falcons, and that's why I put them up in the tier with the Falcons.
Yeah, and we'll see what they do tonight. I could see them losing to Arizona, too. So I have the Chargers, the Jets, the Cowboys, and Denver as my next 4 as a part of a tier. Denver, you got to give them credit. Their defense is good. That's nice.
That's why I have them in this tier. I have that, and that's where this same one with the Jets is where I have the Seahawks and Denver, and I actually even the Dolphins because they get Tua back this week.
Yeah, I still kept the Dolphins in exactly the same place as I had them last week. I mean, I'm not. They say they're getting Tua back this week. Until I see him on the field and he's announced as the starter, I do not believe that yet.
And that's certainly fair, but yeah, I'm going with them there. And that I'd still throw the Rams in this group just because you tell me the Rams can't beat any of these teams on any given week.
Sure, but these are the teams that I would like more than I don't like Dallas at all, but 19 seems to be where they should be.
Yeah, but you wouldn't take the Rams in LA over Dallas?
No, I wouldn't.
Okay.
Like the Rams,
that was a legitimate question. I wasn't trying to be like, oh, you're stupid. I legitimately asking.
What are the Rams now? 2-4?
I know, but this has been without any wide receivers at all.
I get that, and they get Cooper Kupp presumably back on Thursday night. We'll see how much he ends up playing. But it's one thing with the receivers, because I don't find their passing game has really suffered all that much. Like, yeah, there's times when you look at it and be like, hey, if they had Nakua and Kupp right now, they'd be rolling. But it's not like Stafford just doesn't have time to throw. He has to get the ball out so quickly, which I guess is a good thing that Kupp is coming back, that he is the guy that stands to benefit the most for him and Stafford in those situations. But against a good defense, I just think they're screwed. And they have no defense to speak of.
And that's certainly fair. I'm going to go back to the Seahawks real quick when I posted my power rankings on Twitter just to see what people thought, just to give you an idea of why the Seahawks I would have in this lower tier, because in the tier lower where that I have them, legitimately have as many people saying they should be a tier higher as there are people saying they should be a tier lower. Like, nobody missed what to make at the Seahawks.
Listen, I put out a poll during Sunday Night Football about Packers receivers or Jets receivers, who they should sign in the morning. And the options were Donald Driver, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson, and Geronimo Allison. And someone, in all seriousness, replied to me, well, they're just going to sign MVS because he was just cut by the Bills. Completely missing the point that these other idiots haven't played in 5 years. Like, people are fucking morons on Twitter. Don't listen to them. They're idiots. They don't know fuck all. It's like they walk around. It's like they actively went to people with brain injuries and gave them Twitter and were like, here, respond to Jake.
So this is what the example somebody gave is like, remember like when the classes used to be separated, like you had like your smart class and then like your normal class, and like they like, this is what somebody said on like Twitter, is that like this is why we were separated in classes and now everybody's just together.
There you go. See, that person, probably not the brain injury one. Smart comment on that one. But the very serious reply to joke
I know.
is a real tell.
That is. It's always great when you get the very serious. There was something I as so obvious type of thing, and then somebody seriously responded. That's it's good. That's what the mute button's for, Pat. Just mute.
There we are. Are the Jets just cooked, or do they have any sort of chance? Because they have a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way.
It comes down to Aaron Rodgers. It's any given week, Aaron Rodgers, and like Adams. Look, there was. I know people are going to be like, wow, you had Devontae Adams top 20 wide receiver. And I would do it again if you told me I had 9 targets from Aaron Rodgers. The problem is like Aaron Rodgers, like everybody's like, oh, the connection wasn't there, blah, blah. The connection there was for Adams. Adams was in the right spot for most of the game. Adams was doing it pretty well. And I know there was a miscommunication on the one, but Rodgers was just a bad Rodgers in that game. And that's what it comes down to. I don't want to say they're cooked, because they still have a decent enough defense. It's exploitable. It's not dominating. And Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks ago were like, man, like looked pretty damn good. And he was to Breece Hall and to Garrett Wilson the entire game. And Garrett Wilson tried to take blame for that game and the drop and everything like that. But like a lot of it was on Rodgers. I think you're just going to get whether or not Rodgers is having a week, because if he's clicking, they're probably a playoff contender. If you get the Rodgers we just saw in week 7, they're not even top 20. It just all comes down to him.
I agree. And the offensive line has been bad. Like, he's been under duress, which is not good for a 41-year-old.
Yes. No. I think that's part of it, too. That's why. Probably avoid any team that can get pressure, which, there you go. That's probably something that's going to be... Who the Jets have this week? Because I know nobody has a bye this week. It's a weird timing for that. They're at New England. This should be a good week.
Should be a good week. We'll see. And it's New England coming back from London.
It is. Which is so weird. Like, New England, like, what? And the Jaguars chose not to take a bye after 2 weeks in London.
New England did the same thing.
I know.
It's odd.
It's so weird. Yeah, but at least they weren't there for 2 weeks.
True. Tier 5. Arizona, the Rams, the Colts, the Giants, and the Jags. Any specific comments about these teams? Anthony Richardson, is he bad?
Okay, so that's where I was going to go. I actually had the Colts one tier above because to have 4 wins with how terrible this team has been, it's just like, wow, still no Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson playing like trash, and they still have 4 wins. And this comes down to like, yeah, some of the teams they faced, that division sucks. But that's why I put them in the tier above, because I don't think there's a big difference between Indy at 4-3. And then we just talked about the Jets, who only have 2 wins. You kind of both arguments there. Anthony Richardson has an issue. And the issue is not being able to throw it at NFL level. And a lot of it has been like, for fantasy purposes, we've been like, hey, you just have to be mediocre and you're going to be a top 5 quarterback. But the interesting thing, going back and watching that game closely, the second half shift is what people are like, oh, they look better in the second half. They look better in the second half-ish because they just turned Anthony Richardson into the joke that everybody wants to make, just make him a running back. They ran with Anthony Richardson, and that's fine, and that's good for us in fantasy. That's not sustainable for an NFL team or an NFL offense. And maybe Jonathan Taylor comes back and helps give him some more balance. The problem is still going to be Anthony Richardson as somebody who sat here and be like, hey, Josh Downs still has a connection with Anthony Richardson. Sure, he got those targets. It's actually 4, depending on how you look at that, 3 targets. 1 was catchable, which is the one that he caught. Anthony Richardson is the problem, unfortunately.
And you'll see a lot of people, probably just like fantasy bros, being like, hey, Joe Flacco should play. Hey, listen, if I owned Colts in fantasy, I would agree. I would want Joe Flacco to be playing. There's no reason to play Joe Flacco if you're the Colts. It doesn't make any sense.
There isn't. No, there's not. Unless the only thing you could come down to with, and this is going to be a detriment for your future if you make this shift now that he's healthy and you already went back to him, is that if you went to the Bryce Young route and you're like, look, this is, he didn't learn. No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, the only argument you could possibly say, like, he didn't learn enough sitting last year. He needed more time to learn. He was learning from Gardner Minshew, which is not somebody you really want to learn from. So maybe learning from Joe Flacco will get it to him. But again, you're almost heading down the road of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, to use that cliche. Like, I don't know how you do that, but they might be forced into that at some point, because if they keep hanging around a playoff contending team and Anthony Richardson keeps playing like he has, they might just make the switch just to be a playoff contender.
But they're not a playoff contender. With Flacco, they're not a playoff contender. They're better right now.
Their record's there.
Sure, that's fine. They can be the 7 seed and get beat by 1,000 points in the first round. Congratulations.
Sure.
Like, is it about being a good team or not? If they go to Flacco, Richardson's done. It's over for him. Just like it's over for Bryce Young.
Why did they wait so effing long to put Bryce Young in that game yesterday?
Because they don't want him on the field because he stinks.
Yeah, it stinks or not. You should have gotten something out of it. What are you going to get? You're not going to evaluate him this week.
He's going to be the starter.
Denver?
He's going to be the starter again after the Munich game.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, well, they're still in a 3-way race. They're still in a 3-way race for the first pick here.
This went from being like, oh, there's not a lot of quarterbacks in this draft class to there's probably 2 really good ones. And nobody's like, all the people we project to be at the top, all the teams we project are probably not going to be drafting quarterbacks anyway. So there'll probably be only 2 in the top 10 to all of a sudden being like, oh, Carolina's thinking about it. Tennessee's thinking about it. Cleveland's thinking about it. Maybe even the Saints, the Giants, the Raiders. And all of a sudden we might get 5 quarterbacks in the first round again.
Is Drew Lock going to start for the Giants?
No, but it doesn't matter. They both suck. You know this.
This is true. They're not good.
Drew Lock did himself no favors in that brief sample.
Yeah, it's not good. I guess we didn't talk about the Eagles at all. I'm just still like, it's not that I'm out on the Eagles. It's just I want to see more. Maybe score in the first quarter at some point this year.
And that's another one where, and again, it would be like, oh, they beat the teams they're supposed to. Again, the Giants get enough pressure, and they still came away with that game. And Devontae Smith had a big fat 0, actually a negative depending on your scoring in your leagues. And like, they win. Like, if it's not going to be the passing game, it's Barkley and Hurts even on the ground. And if it's not that, then their defense steps up. And defense is coming around. This is what we expect. That secondary had like 3 rookies getting involved too heavily, and they're now all starting to come around. It takes time. That's not a surprise. We know that about secondary players. So I still, as you know, I had the Eagles at 10. I still have them as a top 10 team.
Yeah, I have them at 12. And that's where I had them last week. But they beat the Giants. I'm not moving them because they beat the shitty Giants. Tier number 6, I got Miami, New Orleans, Vegas, Tennessee, and New England. I kind of feel bad for New Orleans. Like they were missing 9 of their top 10 players on Thursday night. Like they're not going to be good without these guys. Like eventually you get past the point of no return with injuries. Shaheed's done for the season. Eventually they'll get Carr back if they even want to use him. Olave could be back this week. We'll see if Lattimore ends up playing. Like those 2 weeks are side. We're going to look back at those first 2 weeks and be like, what happened? The Saints were putting up 50 a game. The offense looked amazing. Clint Kubiak was the hottest head coaching prospect there was. And now they're losing by 5 touchdowns on Thursday night to Denver.
Yeah, because as you just mentioned, you can't have that many injuries to starters and be expected. Like your second team is not going to be that good, and that's basically what they've been rolling out, including at wide receivers. They lost their top 2. So the thing is I'm putting Cleveland in this tier now that they have Jameis Winston.
I'm still putting Cleveland at 32. I'm not convinced they start Jameis Winston.
They will. Because they've already. Dorian Thompson-Robinson got hurt.
Like hurt?
Enough to come out of the game and get replaced by Winston, and they're saying that it shouldn't hold them out from being able to practice, but they're going to turn to Winston. The whole thing coming out of that was that they took Winston from being the backup to avoid the nonsense. It was basically the other Tomlin situation. They were just tired of being asked that Jameis Winston is going to come in, so they said, okay, look, he can't come in. Shut the bleep up, and that's what happened.
And then he ended up in the game anyway for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I prefer that it would be Jameis Winston, but I think if they want to compete for the number 1 pick, they play DTR.
They should, but this goes back to when I had D'Angelo Williams on the podcast. He said their NFL teams will never tank. There's so many levels to it because
you say that, but the Browns just actively played Deshaun Watson for 7 weeks. They were actively tanking.
And but here's the problem. No, because that's what he's saying. He's like, yes, you could get the coaching staff and management on board, even if you could, but the coaches are probably not going to do that unless they're guaranteed. Like, by the way, you're guaranteed. We're going to keep you around. This is just our plan. He was saying, even if you did that, you can't get the players to put their careers on the line to tank. There's only so much you can do.
I'm not saying that you have to. All you have to do is play Dorian Thompson-Robinson as your quarterback, and you're going to lose games. It's that easy.
I don't know if it'll be enough to be the number 1 pick.
Well, they're in competition with New England and Carolina right now.
And they're not. They're not going to put Dorian Thompson. You can't face the fan base in the NFL and say like we're going to go with Dorian Thompson. At least with the whole contract with Watson, there was like we understood it.
Sure. Well, put it this way: in my pickup rankings this week, I have Judy at number 2. Everyone wants Tillman. I'm still going to take Judy.
I agree with you, but I think in a deeper league, Tillman's interesting.
I have him as number 4 wide receiver pickup.
There you go.
And Judy at number 2. I've seen a lot of people like, oh, well, look at what Tillman did on Sunday. It's like, all right, it's 1 week. And Judy ran more routes anyway.
Yeah, if it's Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I don't have a lot of interest in Tillman. If it's Winston, then obviously because it's Winston.
Is Antonio Bryant the worst coach you've ever seen?
What? Possible? Why? But why?
Just week 1 against the Chargers when he punts from like the 35-yard line when they're trying to win the game. The amount of field goals that he kicked and decided to kick against the Rams this week. And the Rams actually kept them in it by missing a super short field goal to keep them down 8. It's like he's like, oh, well, if we chip away right now, we can get it down to 11. And then if we kick another field goal, we can get it to 8. Presuming that the other team is never going to score again and just reverse it to 2 scores. Like, it's mind-boggling, some of the decisions that he makes, like such a fucking coward the entire game. I get the team isn't very good, but you might as well just start going for it then. Who cares? Okay,
so Antonio Pierce, because I'm like thinking like, is Antonio Bryant?
Did I say Antonio Bryant?
Why?
I guess the bigger moron is me then. I'm the moron here.
I was like, is he a wide receivers coach somewhere? I didn't realize. That's what I was trying to figure out. I was like, is he coaching the Browns wide receivers? But yeah, so Antonio Pierce, I don't know what he's doing at this point. That's one where if you told me, hey, by the way, the coach is in lockstep with the organization to tank, that would be like, oh, I believe you, Pat.
Cuss pointed out he wears his headset, but the microphone isn't near his mouth. So he's not actually saying anything. He's just like walking around. It's like not on. It's not plugged into. He's like Nate Hackett, just not plugged into anything. Like, yeah, dude, don't give him the place.
Well, Aiden O'Connell's now out for 6 to 8 weeks, so they're forced to stick with Gardner Minshew. So
It's better. It's better.
Yeah.
I gotta say, it's better with Minshew. AOC is awful.
We knew that, but that's why the Raiders need a quarterback. But the Raiders need a lot of things.
Well, they need a lot of things. But I mean, if maybe that goes apart with your Pierce, not Bryant, Pierce, and Aiden O'Connell playing quarterback, that they are actively tanking.
That's what I'm saying. You could give me the sign, and maybe that's the whole thing. Is like maybe Zamir White isn't actually this bad. It's just he knows that he can actually do something. But Alexander Madison did fine yesterday. We know Zamir White is that bad.
All right, all of the pickups will be updated in the description and comment section, along with the injury report and the underdog plays for Monday Night Football. You can follow Jake at AllenKid. His waiver wire will come out on The Athletic on Monday evening, then his rankings a little bit later on in the week. All right, smash the like while you're here, sub to the channel, and get those ballots in the draw for the $500. Okay? I'll see you next time.
That Mayo experience. Experience.